Leaving AA isn't just about walking away from meetings, it's also about rewiring our brains. Yes, AA hijacks our brains, and in this video, I'm going to share with you 7 ways AA can hijack your brain and what you can do. Hello, and welcome to the Sobriety Bestie Podcast. My name is Kirsten, and I'm super excited you are here today. For context, I was in AA for 10 years, and I left in 2020 and have been deprogramming some of that time ever since. I did a lot of deprogramming the first year, and then at 5 years, I started deprogramming again, and more was revealed, and there was a lot more. There has been a lot more for me to deconstruct. Essentially, I'm on Team Freedom, and I want to get free, and so I keep doing the work to keep opening up more pockets of freedom. This is the second video in our critical thinking series, because critical thinking and self-trust are huge vibes when you leave a high control group or a cult religion like 12-step, like Alcoholics Anonymous. So if you missed the first video in the series, it is called 5 Ways to Stop Second Guessing Yourself After Leaving AA. I will put it up here, and I will also post it below. Now let's look at 7 ways AA can silently and subtly and then aggressively shape your thinking and how to regain control of your critical thinking. So the first way is through what is called authority bias. Authority bias is believing people in power or with experience automatically know better than you do. Of course, in AA, this is the old timers or the sponsors or the ones, circuit speakers, the ones who are more AA famous, if you will. Or literally the people who have more time sobriety than us. There's a hierarchy in AA, and oftentimes that hierarchy is equated, like our value or our worthiness to be listened to is graded or equated by our sobriety time. This will have some people lying about if they drank again just so they can keep their status and their authority. It's also part of the reason why I've deconstructed from sobriety time in general. It just feels like some weird ego game that's not relevant to anything about how I'm actually doing today. It doesn't have to do with quality of life today. I did make a video about, I guess 2 weeks ago now, I turned 16 years sober, and I made a video about deconstructing sober time and sober birthdays. I'll put that up here and below if you want to check that out. And it really made me think that this is probably the last year that I'm going to be counting my sobriety time anyways, because who gives a crap about how long you've been sober? I would rather count my life and be proud of my life by what I am building, what I'm creating, who I'm becoming, how I treat people, achieving my goals, things that are relevant to who I am today, not relevant to what I stopped doing in 2009, which was drinking alcohol. In AA, questioning authority can be seen as your disease talking, your ego, resisting the program, not falling in line. And if you do it in a meeting, if you say things in a meeting that don't follow the script, you can be shunned. People might comment after you in little chains to correct you or to shame you or to silence you in a way. You might be told after the meeting to fall in line. And so our belonging is tied to this authority of the group, of our sponsor, of the old timers, of those with more time than us, of the book itself. And so, yeah, we're coerced into surrendering essentially to the authority, and the ultimate authority of the group that we're taught to surrender to is a higher power of our understanding, is to God. So the power is outside of ourselves. The power is in the book. The power is in the people, in the sponsors, in the old timers, and those with authority in more sobriety time. And the authority is in God. It is not, or our higher power. It's not within ourselves. And so a huge healing here, a huge evolution here is to reclaim our agency and our autonomy and to give ourselves our own authority, to be the authors of our own lives. The second way that you might have a cognitive bias that AA installed in you is what's called groupthink. In groupthink, the need for group harmony overrides our ability to think critically or to speak up. Our survival depends upon us thinking like the group. That's how we keep safe, by silencing what we really think or who we actually are and surrendering our will and our life over to the group think, to the way of being, to parroting the slogans. If we doubt the group think, we'll be told it's our disease talking, or we'll lose connection. I mean, straight up, we'll lose connection. If we're not falling in line with the group think, the group won't want to engage with us as much. There's always the people in the group that would say things that were, or even if somebody was identifying as a drug addict in an AA meeting, whatever it was that wasn't according to the group think of that meeting or of that fellowship, there would be consequences. And usually that's removing love. It's really removing connection because of the love bombing. I wouldn't say that it's love that's being removed, because if you love somebody, they're allowed to think differently than you. You love who they are. You love them. So you're not worried about them believing every single thing that you believe. So to me, it's like the removal of the love bombing. It's like the opposite of the love bombing. It's the silencing and the shaming. And that happens when we don't go along with the group think. Essentially, we learn to trade our authenticity for approval by thinking like the group. To me, recovery from groupthink, the groupthink bias, or from 12-step or Alcoholics Anonymous ideology, the recovery is our individuality. It's our authenticity. Because obviously when we were drinking, we were acting a little different than we normally authentically would. Maybe that was our authentic drunk. So going from self-medicating with alcohol, we're kind of getting out of our who we are authentically, and then self-medicating with AA and falling into the group think. If you did, like I did, I was a true believer, right, for a decade. And then after that, the recovery to me is our own individuality. It's being ourselves. It's our authenticity without being told what to think and without being punished for thinking for ourselves. In fact, if anybody is punishing you for thinking for yourself, run. That is not a safe relationship. If you have to abandon yourself to belong, maybe it's something you don't want to belong to. The third way AA can hijack our thinking is with confirmation bias. What this can look like in AA is that we're noticing only the evidence that confirms what we already believe. We notice evidence that AA works because there's people collecting sobriety birthday chips. That's not an accident. That social proof or that testimony is a sales tactic. We know Bill was a salesman, and good for him. And if he had a good thing going, it would be good to infuse your program with sales tactics or marketing tactics or whatever. So it's not that sales tactics are bad or wrong. It's that it's just baloney. So you're selling baloney. And I don't know, a lot of us don't want to buy baloney anymore now that we're deconstructing. We realize that we were living baloney for a while. I was living baloney for a decade. Why does baloney sound so funny? This is also where failures are raised as not working the program or not being constitutionally capable of being honest with yourself, which is confirming that the program works, but that you didn't, or they didn't, or he didn't, or she didn't work it right. Because it works if you work it. So you see all this proof that it's working, because you don't see the people who leave and stay sober, or leave and drink responsibly, or drink moderately, or drink without, like, it's not problematically. Or you don't see the people who leave AA later, like the deconstructors, and are fine and are not drinking. So the confirmation bias is super deep in AA, especially when you're encouraged to shun those who leave, when you're encouraged to not read outside literature. So you're kept in a bubble, and in that bubble, the ideology has it so that the hijacking of your brain has it so that you see, that we see, that I saw, that AA works. Here's the evidence that it works. And then if it doesn't work within that closed system, then it doesn't work because they didn't work it. They weren't honest enough. They didn't do all of their amends. Find any reason to show why it was the individual's fault and not the group's fault. So it creates this confirmation belief of it's working because I work it. What I get a lot in the comments on social media, it's really an interesting confirmation bias, hijacked brain, is that people will say AA works because it worked for me. And I'm like, bro, like that's not how it works. Like I have a bit of a stats background, and in statistics, you would never say this works because it worked for me. Let's talk about gravity, and I'm an astronaut, and I want to say gravity doesn't exist because it doesn't exist for me. Well, no, bro, that's not true. It's you had a specific experience in specific circumstances where you had a specific result. It does not mean that's everybody's result. And if you think that your own individual experience can infer to the entire population of people, that's bananas. That is like, I don't know. That's like self-centered in the extreme. Yeah, the world doesn't work that way. Our own experience is never everybody's experience. But I see that as a cognitive bias, which is, I'd say it's like a super self-centered confirmation bias, where you think because it works for you, it works in general. No, it works for you means it worked for you, and that's it. This can also be called cherry picking, when we pick data that supports our belief. And the bias in our mind, how our mind is hijacked from reality because we're in the AA ideology, is that like, yeah, because it worked for me, it works for everybody, or because it worked for the people around me, it works for everybody, or it works, period. When we're not looking at the entire full picture of people who, like, what, out of 100 people who come to AA, 5 of them are going to be there a year later, or 5 of them are going to have like a year sober a year later. What about the other 95%? What happened to them? What percentage of those are drunk, are dead? Because if AA says to leave is to die, essentially, jails, institutions, and death, then what about those other 95 people? How many of them are sober with no recovery method? In fact, a lot of the things that I've read, books and papers, is that most people who get sober or recover from alcohol addiction or alcohol use disorder do so, they recover without treatment at all. So the most common way to recover from alcohol addiction is to do freaking nothing. To have no program, to like not go to AA or church basements or anything, is people recover on their own. I mean, that's what I did with cigarette smoking. I recovered without treatment. I recovered on my own. There were things that helped me. Like I did it right when I went out of town for a month. I flew to India when I was 6 months sober, and I was doing a yoga training there, an Ashtanga Mysore yoga adventure, right? And so I didn't smoke when I was there. So changing my environment really helped for that. I also didn't want to feel the shame of smoking outside the shala while everyone who's flown from all around the world to go to this like famous yoga place is like all these, I mean, and quite frankly, I was not very good at yoga at the time or even now, 15 years later, because I don't really believe in being good at yoga, right? It's about just like kind of trying to enjoy your body in the session or whatever and breathe and relax and or strengthen or whatever kind of yoga you're doing. But there was all these like really good yogis there, like extreme, like kind of balancing on like one finger, feet in the air, everything. And so I was like out of my element, but I also didn't want to feel the shame of having them all see me that I smoke when yoga is about breath. And so it was the not wanting to feel the shame really helped. Being in a new environment helped. So I didn't have a treatment program, but there were things, if I look back in hindsight, I could see this really helped. The point is, most of us get sober without a program. Most of us recover from anything without an actual like treatment. The idea of treatment, a lot of it actually, especially the forever recovery model. The forever recovery model really, I think, probably came from Bill Wilson. I'll have to like double down and do a little more research on that. But I think he indoctrinated society into the idea that we need recovery forever. So talk about confirmation bias, because the people around you say that recovery is forever, that you're going to do it forever, and then you think everybody else needs to do it forever. But what about all the other people? Like I have a family member who stopped drinking in the 80s with no treatment. They still have not had a drink since then. That's most of people's experience. So deprogramming starts when we look at all of the data, or more data than just what we were told to look at when we were inside the system of Alcoholics Anonymous. The fourth way that AA hijacks our brain is through what's called learned helplessness. Learned helplessness is when a repetition of something like powerlessness trains you to believe that you can't change things. AA does this in many ways. Maybe you heard me talk about the elephant example. You've probably heard about the elephant example in general. So what this is like is you have a baby elephant and you tie them with a rope to a stake in the ground. They try to run, they do run, and they jump, and they try to move and get away from being tied and tethered to the ground, and they're not able to because they're not strong enough to pull up the rope and the stake and run off. Eventually, after 10 tries, 30 tries, 126 tries, any random number we can make up, they learn that they are helpless. It's helpless with air quotes. They learn that they are helpless, so they stop even trying. But then what happens is that later in life, when the elephant is grown and bigger and stronger, it can in fact break free. But it doesn't even try because it's already learned and it's put that deep into its brain that there's no point. So it doesn't even try. Learned helplessness. AA does this in multiple ways. Number one, by framing us as having a fatal progressive disease that we will never get rid of. What this might sound like is once, air quotes, once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. The idea that we have this forever disease, that we have this forever alcoholic identity is the deepest way we get locked into a system, because identity is the core that like rules everything. So they get us to lock into that identity. Obviously, we all know, even if you've never been to AA, we all know how this happens. How does it happen? The group pressure to say, hello, my name is Kirsten and I am an alcoholic. That's how they get us to start to identify, because we keep saying, I am an alcoholic again and again and again. And then we have all these people who give us love, and give love in air quotes. They give us connection because we fell in line with the group think, the identity. Another way the learned helplessness happens, which is subtle and nuanced, but I'd say catastrophic, at least in my own thinking, is the whole higher power thing. If I'm constantly outsourcing my agency, turning over my will, surrendering to this higher power and being in constant contact with my higher power, and I have to pray about it, and I have to talk to my higher power about it, even if my higher power is a doorknob, or talk to my sponsor about it, I am learning to betray myself, that I can't trust myself, that somebody outside of me or something outside of me knows better than I do for me. And so that creates a learned helplessness, because I'm no longer just knowing what's best for me and moving forward. Now there's all these things that have to happen. I have to pray for a sign. I have to talk to my higher power and then see what feels, wait for that intuitive knowing or that intuitive thing. But I can intuitively know something without having to outsource my agency. So there's a learned helplessness that can come in through the higher power door. And this is all rooted in the whole concept of powerlessness. And what I'd say today, if anybody tries to convince you that you are powerless, run, run, run. The baby elephant may have been powerless to run away when it was staked into the ground, but the adult elephant wasn't. Teaching someone that they're powerless when it's actually a state is harmful. It's extremely abusive, I'd say. It's messed up, because then later we don't even try because we believe the powerless narrative. So the way that I look at it, we were never powerless. We were caught in an addictive state where drinking became somewhat automatic, or we were unable to control our drinking at times. But that's different than being powerless forever and powerless in general, and having to outsource your power to a higher power or to a person that's not you, who also is not trusting their thinking. Learned helplessness is not a vibe. To me, recovery is remembering that you were powerful all along. And the fifth way that AA can hijack our thinking is through what's called negativity bias. Negativity bias is where the brain naturally gives more weight to negative events or stories than positive ones. You've likely heard the endless horror stories to keep you compliant. The people who go back out or out there. I'm doing air quotes because there is no out there. There's just here. People who go back out. Back out what? Even the language. I'm like, there's just so much baloney language in AA to keep it such a loaded language, right? That's what part of a cult tactic is, all the loaded language. So we'll always hear the horror stories of, oh, I went out, I thought I could think for myself, I thought I had it licked, whatever. And then I drank and it was just like they say and it was horrible and now I'm back. And so we hear these stories, the horror stories in AA, and we don't hear the glory stories. If we're going to call them horror stories and glory stories, or success thriving without AA stories, which is why I love the comments under these videos. So definitely leave a comment under the video and share your experience with AA mind control, the hijacking, or your freedom from AA, because I love the comments on these videos so much, because it's really demonstrating again and again and again by hundreds of people who are not me that you can leave AA and be okay. And that is not what's happening inside Alcoholics Anonymous. There is a negativity bias. It is, if you leave, it is dangerous to leave and you will end up in jails, institutions, or death. Bad things will happen if you leave. Negativity bias. What about all the people who leave and bad things don't happen? Where are they congregating and sharing their good news? Where are they sharing their testimonials? That is not what we're exposed to when we're inside the closed system of Alcoholics Anonymous, unless you come peep my YouTube channel and watch through some of the videos, and especially if you read the comments where you see all the people who are leaving and doing just fine. I'd say it's important to remember or point out that our brain has what's been called like a success mechanism or a failure mechanism, or you've heard the idea of where focus goes, energy flows. The idea is that whatever we're putting our attention on is going to amplify, magnify, come more into our field, however you want to talk about it, whether we're just being practical or whether we're looking through the lens of neuroscience or whether we're looking through the lens of something more spiritual or manifesting. But if you put your mind on something, like for example, if you get a blue truck, now all of a sudden you're going to see blue trucks everywhere. It's not that the blue trucks weren't already there. It's that you weren't even noticing them because they weren't on your radar. There's a part of our brain that amplifies this. It's literally a filtering system of where our attention goes. So if our attention is only on this negativity bias, which is how brains can tend to work, because think about it like back in the day, right? We'd be more likely to survive if we were going to be noticing the predators, the tigers, the danger in our environment. We're coming out of our cave to pick berries or whatever, or go hunting. And we don't need to be focusing on joy in order to survive. We need to be focusing on staying away from the danger. So our brains have evolved. Sadly, the joyful berry pickers no longer exist. They have no ancestors. They didn't make it. The tigers ate them. But the people who were better at, surviving, because the brain's number one job is to keep you alive. If you are not alive, nothing else matters, obviously. So the brain's trying to keep us alive. So there is naturally a negativity bias to our brain. But inside Alcoholics Anonymous, it goes really deep that it's unsafe to not only to leave, but to dissent. It is dangerous to dissent from Alcoholics Anonymous ideology. Our own evolution skyrockets when we work with our negativity bias. We stop focusing on what we don't want or the negative stuff, and we start focusing on what we do want. So instead of saying things like, with leaving AA, it's unsafe to leave, it's dangerous to leave, saying things like, is there any evidence that it's safe to leave AA? It's just switching the perspective. And we can do this on any goal. This is not just about leaving AA, it's about how our brains work, the negativity bias. So by actively looking for the positive, the good, or anything that supports where you're going or your goal can get you in a different mind state. And then you start to see it like that blue truck. So let's say you didn't get the blue truck, but you got a red Honda. Now you're seeing red Hondas everywhere, and you're not seeing the blue trucks because you didn't get the blue truck. It's not that these things weren't there. It's that you switched your focus from a blue truck to a red Honda, or from a negativity bias to actively looking for evidence that supports your critical thinking. What if this isn't true? What if there is other evidence that pokes holes in what I'm currently believing? So it's really about waking up to, I don't know, I want to be on Team Freedom and I want to always evolve. So it's waking up to how our minds might be telling a story that's not grounded in reality, and thinking critically to see what's true for us, or to even envisioning things like who we want to become and start taking action in that direction and move our life to where we want to be living from. The sixth way AA can hijack our minds is through what's called anchoring bias. Anchoring bias is when we're clinging to the first belief or label we were given, even when new evidence appears. This can sound like once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic, or hearing a lot of us when we come to recovery, at least was my experience. I had no experience with recovery before I got to AA. So I get to AA. AA tells me AA is the way. And so I am anchored on that belief. And I'm not even noticing other information because I'm not looking for it, because I was told it was dangerous to look for other information. It's the last house on the block. It's the only thing that works. I'm a real alcoholic. So if you're a real alcoholic, this is the only thing that is going to work for you. So my mind is not even open at that point. And this is 2009 when I got to AA, right? My mind's not even open to things like Smart Recovery or other books of people who have written about things like rational recovery or other methods to sobriety. Actually, this month in the Deprogram Lounge, It's the free deprogramming group. If you want to join, I'll put the link below. But the Deprogramming Lounge this month, our book in our book club is The Biology of Desire, Why Addiction is Not a Disease by Mark Lewis, PhD. It's a great book. Actually, I'll link the books below. I'll link all of the deprogramming books below that I've read. I made a whole Amazon storefront with the books in it. So if you want to see which deprogramming books I've read, if you want to join the deprogramming book club, it's all below. The Deprogramming Book Club is in the Deprogram Lounge, and I'll also link the books below that I've been reading that have been super illuminating. I love outside literature. Again, this is air quotes because there's no such thing as inside and outside literature. It's like literally just cult terms. I love books about different ways, different paths to recovery. It's totally interesting to me. I'm fascinated with addiction in general. And honestly, I think that we all could face addiction. I don't really see it as I don't see it as the way I was first told. I don't anchor onto what AA told me anymore. I don't believe in AA ideology. I don't most of it, I think, is baloney. The core principles in it, baloney. It's a religious conversion program. And I think it worked like that for me. I got converted into Bill's religion. I got Bill boozled. Did you get Bill boozled in Alcoholics Anonymous? Let me know in the comments if you got Bill boozled, if you were filled with the Bill shit in Oh my God, it's so funny. These terms are so funny, and I didn't make these terms up. Y'all in the comments have been writing these funny terms like Bill boozled, love it. Bill shit, love it. Okay, I digress. Let's continue. And a huge problem with the anchoring bias, especially in the context of Alcoholics Anonymous, is that it's anchoring us to our lowest or one of our lowest points. So I need to also anchor to the fact that I'm an alcoholic or that I used to drink a lot. That literally has nothing to do with my life today. Why do I need to tie myself to the past? It doesn't make any sense to me now. It's been over 16 years since I've had a drink of alcohol. Why do I need to obsess on that today? I'm not obsessing about cigarettes today, and I'm not smoking. It's been 15 years. I'm not obsessing about sodas today. And I don't even know when I quit drinking sodas. I can't remember. Was it 2010? Was it 2011? Was it 2009? I don't know. Because I don't care. Because it's not relevant. Because I'm not freaking out about it. Because it's not a big deal. Because I'm not anchoring to the past and things. I don't have to anchor to what I first heard. I don't have to anchor to who I used to be. In fact, I would encourage everyone not to. I would encourage everybody to, to think clear. To think critically about what makes sense to us now and what information, when we look at other information, what makes sense to us. What do you think? Let me know what you think in the comments. You are definitely allowed to outgrow your anchor and to rewrite your story. In fact, I would encourage it. This is something I like to do a lot, is to rewrite the story, to always be evolving. A seventh way that AA can hijack our brains is through what's called an illusory truth effect. The illusory truth effect can be when we hear something repeatedly, it can make it feel true even when it's false. Hello, AA slogans. There is a reason why the slogans are there. It's not cutesy or accidental. This is part of the brainwashing. If you hear something enough, it starts to feel real. Our brains start to take that as truth just because of the repetition. So if we keep hearing it works if you work it, we believe that if we work it, it will work for us. Even if we see that it's not working for us, we will still believe if we work it, it will work for us. And if it doesn't work for us, meaning if we're doing the 12 steps and we're not sober, then if it's not working for us, then people will say it's because you're not working it right. You're not working it hard enough. You're not working it honest enough. You're not working it complete enough. There's a way that you're not working it right if it's not working for you. And if it is working for you, it's because you're working it, even if you're not totally honest, even if you're not doing it completely fully, even if you're not, it just doesn't even make any sense. But it creates this illusion of truth because of the repetition. There's a lot of repetition in AA. The repetition leads to a familiarity, which can replace evidence. So because we keep hearing things, we think that it's evidence that it's reality, instead of actually looking for reality or evidence in the situation. Our brains are treating the repetition as reliability. And over time, This is rewiring our brains to take these ideas or these mantras, these AA slogans as fact. But we can uninstall the programming. We can deprogram by examining, by investigating these so-called AA truths or their truth claims. So AA talks about contempt prior to investigation, meaning the way that I interpreted that, because that's at the back of the AA Big Book, right? The way that I interpreted the contempt prior to investigation as a way to remain in everlasting ignorance, Herbert Spencer, I think that's the vibe. I took that as AA is saying, don't judge the concept of God or the 12 steps or Bill's ideas as bad until you try them. You have to try the program. You have to try Bill's ideas, the 12 steps. You have to try the sponsorship. You have to try the fellowship. You have to try the higher power. Don't have contempt for it before you investigate it. But what I would say is the people inside AA ideology have contempt prior to investigation of other methodologies or of dissenters like me or of people deprogramming. They have contempt for us, if you're also here because you're deprogramming, without investigating whether or not what we're saying is true. But it's also not their fault. But because they've had their brains essentially hijacked by Alcoholics Anonymous, like I did, this was me too. So I'm not like really wanting to point a finger here because, but for the grace of God, there go I, because it was me. I did it. I believed it all. I was a true believer. I believed it all was true. But because when we get this repetition and this brainwashing and it locks into our cognitive biases, our brains are hijacked. So we're in a way, we're not there. We're not thinking clearly. We're responsible for what we do. We're responsible for our actions in the world, right? But our thinking has been hijacked and replaced with AA ideology. So we don't even realize that we're having contempt prior to investigating other paths to sobriety, that you can leave AA, what deprogrammers are actually doing. We can't see that. What I've been thinking recently that goes along with this illusory truth effect is that AA, for me, had me in belief prior to investigation. AA talks about contempt prior to investigation, but it's like they demanded of me, and maybe this is your experience too, they demanded of me belief prior to investigation. I'm supposed to believe that it works. I'm supposed to believe that you're sober and that the 12 steps is how you got there and that it will work for me and that I have to do this, otherwise I'm going to die or get arrested or be institutionalized. So I have to believe this before I investigate it. I'm not allowed to investigate it. I have to have faith that it works, take the action, do the next right action. I have to fake it till I make it and just do the program because it'll work if I work it. It's so bananas when I think about it all. And I'm supposed to believe it all prior to investigating. In fact, I'm not allowed to investigate. AA is like believe without investigation, not even prior to. So AA is belief without investigation. And it creates this illusory truth effect, that what we're doing works because we're doing it without noticing the people falling off that it doesn't work for, or the fact that it would probably, likely, who's to say really, how can you separate what did happen from what could have happened, right? You can't. But would we all have got sober anyways without AA? Are you done when you're done? Did us making a decision to get sober, is that what got us sober? And then we found ways to support ourselves. And even if AA did give us benefits, like some support or whatever, would we have found that somewhere else? All right, I'm so interested to hear what you think. Is there a way that AA hijacked your brain or that you've seen AA hijack brains that I didn't mention here? Feel free to drop that in the comments. As always, it's fun to see you in the comments. Let's keep getting free together. You know, that's all my vibe, Team Freedom up in here. And if you want to join the Deprogram Lounge, I'll put that below with our book club and our Zooms. If you want to look at my Deprogram books, I'll link those below. And yeah, I really want to hear any way that you've noticed that AA could have hijacked your mind. This is all along the idea of cognitive biases as we are waking up to deeper levels of critical thinking and getting mofo free. All right, take care, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.